The envelope sat beside my plate like a threat dressed in white. My name typed in capital letters centered. No handwriting. No warmth, just sterile precision. Dad didn't even look at me when I opened it. $1,500 a month, he said like he was reading a utility bill. Includes rent, internet, electricity, and your share of household costs. I blinked at the itemized list. $900 base rent, $200 utilities, $400 household contribution. At the bottom, due on the first late fees apply. Next to me, Chloe twirled her pasta. Her nails were freshly done, her phone screen glowing with some influencer skincare routine. She didn't even glance up. But Chloe doesn't, I began. She's still figuring out her direction. Mom cut in smoothly, her voice honeyed. You have 2 jobs, Lucy. You're stable. It's time you learn adult responsibility. I'm stable because I haven't had a day off in 6 months, because I work from 8 to 4 at the bank, then sprint across town to serve tables until midnight, because I clip coupons and skip breakfast and live in the room I painted when I was 10. I looked at the invoice again. Every number hit like a judgment. When does this start? I asked quietly. Next week, Dad replied. We trust you can manage that. Mom's fork tapped the rim of her glass. And just so we're clear, late payments come with a $50 fee. It's how the real world works. I nodded because what else was I going to do? I folded the paper carefully, slipped it into my pocket, and excused myself before the weight in my chest cracked something open. Upstairs, I opened my laptop and checked my bank balance. Not great, but not empty. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I opened a new spreadsheet, labeled it Rent Receipts, and started typing. Downstairs, Chloe laughed at something on her phone. I added another column, Expenses They Don't Pay. I was learning just not the lesson they thought they were teaching. And when I opened my credit card statement, I saw her name on the account. By the end of the week, I'd worked 5 bank shifts, 3 closing shifts at the restaurant, and eaten exactly 4 full meals. My wrists ached from carrying trays. My legs throbbed from standing too long, and my inbox was a mix of overdraft alerts and reminders about rent. When I came home Friday night, Chloe was draped across the living room couch wearing one of my old sweatshirts like it was hers. The TV played a rerun of some dating show. On the coffee table sat an Amazon package with my name on it, addressed to me, purchased by someone else. Chloe, I said, holding up the package. Did you use my card again? She didn't even blink. You said I could once. That was months ago. For textbooks. She shrugged. Well, you never changed the login. I stared at her, waiting for even a hint of apology. None came, just the sound of canned laughter from the television. Mom walked in from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dish towel. What's going on? She's still using my credit card, I said quietly. Mom sighed like she was already bored of the conversation. Lucy, Chloe's trying to find her path. You're the one with steady income. Why not support each other instead of keeping score? I swallowed the lump in my throat. They didn't see it as theft. They saw it as expected, natural. I earned. She consumed, balance in their eyes. That night, I sat on my bed and scrolled through my bank app. There were charges I didn't recognize. Cosmetics, streaming subscriptions, meal kits, none of them mine. All of them billed to the card linked to our shared family Wi-Fi account. I clicked open my spreadsheet and added a new tab, Chloe's charges. Then I opened a new browser tab and typed how to dispute unauthorized family credit card use. I didn't press enter. Instead, I opened another tab and searched how to open a high-yield savings account. I opened the account during my lunch break on a Tuesday. Not at the branch where I work too visible, but at a credit union across town. I used my work email, set up a new P.O. box for correspondence, and funded it with the small bonus I'd earned last quarter for meeting quarterly targets. $1,000 a quiet start. That night, I updated my spreadsheet tab by tab, rent payments, utility contributions, groceries I'd bought without being asked. I created color-coded columns, green for confirmed payments, yellow for disputed charges, red for Chloe's digital footprints on my accounts. Every click felt like reclaiming a breath. 2 days later, I was balancing deposits at my teller window when Noah leaned over the divider with his usual lazy grin. "You look like you're preparing for court." "Maybe I am," I muttered. He raised an eyebrow and I told him not everything, but enough. "The rent invoice Chloe's charges the unspoken rules of our house." "Want to see something?" he asked, then pulled up a public mortgage registry on his screen. "Your parents refinanced last year. Their loan's delinquent at least 90 days behind." I blinked. "But I've been paying." "They're not teaching you anything," he said. "They're keeping the lights on with your paycheck. That's not responsibility, that's dependence." Later that evening, I stared at my spreadsheet again, added a new row beneath mortgage contribution in bold. I typed, "This isn't about helping me grow. This is about keeping them from drowning." Then I made 2 copies. One for my desktop, one for the cloud, and labeled the folder evidence. I closed the screen and lay back on my bed, trying to calculate how long it might take to save enough to leave. The number was too big, the hours too many. But I wasn't just working anymore. I was recording. And recording, I was learning, could be its own kind of resistance. It started with Noah sliding his phone across the break room table during a late lunch. "Look at this," he said. Foreclosed 3-bedroom decent neighborhood priced way under market because the owner's desperate to sell. I expected a fixer-upper, but the pictures showed hardwood floors, clean windows, even a small backyard. It wasn't glamorous, but it looked possible. "I can't afford a house," I said, though my voice faltered in its certainty. Noah shrugged. "Not today, but maybe not as far off as you think. You've been saving, right?" I nodded slowly, the number in my secret account climbing higher each week. Not enough for a dream home, but maybe enough for a foothold. That night, after my shift at the restaurant, I stayed up late reading everything I could find. How to buy a home through an LLC, ways to keep real estate purchases, private protecting personal identity and public records. By morning, I had a plan. Mrs. Carter, a longtime client from the bank, and a semi-retired real estate agent met me at a corner cafe. She'd always been kind, quietly observant, never nosy. When I told her what I needed, she didn't flinch. "We'll set up a shell LLC," she said. "You'll be the sole member, but your name won't be on the purchase paperwork, just Triumph Properties LLC." I smiled at the name. "Why Triumph, you picked it?" she said, smirking. "It was the first thing you wrote when I asked what this was really about. I didn't remember writing it, but I liked the way it sounded. Strong final." The paperwork moved fast. Noah helped me draft the financials. Mrs. Carter handled the filings, and by the following week, I had a folder labeled with the LLC's name and a checklist titled Operation Exit. Each night, I packed a few boxes, clothes, books, old sketch pads, anything I didn't want left behind. I kept them in the trunk of my car and drove them to a storage unit during lunch breaks. Nobody asked where my bookshelf went. Nobody noticed my closet thinning out. Chloe was too busy with her ring light and haul videos. And my parents, they just assumed I was tired. They weren't wrong, I was tired. But for the first time, it didn't feel like surrender. It felt like planning. I chose a Tuesday. Everyone would be out. Chloe had a yoga class she only half attended but never skipped. Mom's book club met at the community center. Dad played racquetball with men who laughed too loud and clapped each other on the back like they were still in high school. I'd rehearsed the timing down to the minute. Noah helped me load the heavier boxes into his trunk that morning under the excuse of a ride to work. The rest, my toiletries, the last drawer of clothes, my laptop fit neatly into the back seat of my car. I left my key on my nightstand. On the kitchen table, I placed a single sheet of paper folded in half. The front read simply, Lucy. Inside, as of today, I am moving out. Rent is no longer due. The internet and all other services attached to my name will be disconnected within 24 hours. Please forward any mail to the address on file with the bank. L, no emotions, no explanations, just the facts. I stood in the doorway for a second, letting the silence of the house settle into my chest. The hallway smelled like the citrus cleaner Mom always used, and Chloe's door was cracked open, spilling lavender light from her salt lamp. My old trophies still lined the mantel debate, science fair, perfect attendance things I had outgrown, but they had kept on display like proof they'd raised someone useful. I shut the door behind me without looking back. In the car, I opened my phone and went down the list. Mom block, dad block, Chloe block. The silence that followed was immediate, like switching off a machine that had been humming just beneath my skin for years. Later that afternoon, Mrs. Carter called. "Your offer was accepted," she said. "Triumph Properties officially owns the listing. We'll close in under 30 days. I pressed my forehead to the steering wheel and closed my eyes. Not relief, not yet. But the quiet knowledge that the exit wasn't just a fantasy anymore. It was concrete. It was mine. I parked the car outside my temporary sublet, a small guest room at Noah's sister's place, and carried in the first of my things. That night, I slept without earplugs. No upstairs pacing, no Chloe shouting on her phone, no laundry machine running past midnight, just breath and stillness. And the next morning, when I checked my savings, I added a new line beneath the total. Final rent paid none. They found me faster than I expected. The letter must have arrived that morning, a plain envelope, black ink, addressed to current resident. Inside a formal notice, the mortgage on their home had officially transferred to Triumph Properties, LLC. Effective immediately. Mrs. Carter texted me a photo of my mother's face as she retrieved the mail, pale, open-mouthed, clutching the paper like it might bite her. My father stood behind her, scanning the page with tight, angry eyes. By evening, they were at my door. I watched them through the peephole. My father in a stiff polo shirt, jaw clenched. My mother wringing her hands, Chloe behind them, arms crossed, sunglasses perched on her head like armor. I opened the door halfway, stepping into the threshold. Lucy, Mom began voice light like nothing had happened. "We got a letter. Some company took over the mortgage. We think there's been a mistake." "There hasn't," I said. Dad's brow furrowed. "You know anything about Triumph Properties?" "I do." I didn't say more. I didn't need to. Mom shifted, glancing nervously at Chloe. "Sweetheart, Chloe's going to need a place to stay while we figure this out. Just temporarily. You've always been so responsible." I nodded thoughtfully. "Garage couch. $1,500 a month. Late fees apply." Chloe's head snapped toward me. "Are you serious?" "Dead serious," I said. "You taught me well." Dad's face went red. "This isn't a game, Lucy. We're your family." I tilted my head. "So were you, when you handed me a typed invoice and called it love." Mom's voice cracked. "We didn't mean to. I know exactly what you meant to do," I said. And I learned. I stepped back inside and closed the door, their voices muffled through the wood. No yelling, no pounding, just the hollow quiet of people who had finally run out of control. I stood still for a moment, then turned and walked to the small table where my laptop waited. The folder labeled mortgage documents was already open. I added a new file beneath it. Interaction log, first visit. I didn't invite them back. They showed up again anyway. This time they didn't knock right away, just stood at the edge of the porch like they were waiting for permission. I opened the door slowly and didn't step aside. "We need to talk," Dad said. "I figured," I replied. I walked into the house without saying anything else. They followed. I led them to the kitchen where 3 chairs were already arranged and a manila envelope sat on the table. I sat first, then slid the envelope toward them. Mom opened it. Inside were 2 years of records. Every rent payment, every late fee utility splits, grocery receipts, credit card charges under Chloe's name. It took them minutes to realize what they were looking at. "I kept every single document," I said. "Because you taught me to." Chloe sat stiffly, arms crossed, pretending not to read over Mom's shoulder. Dad stayed silent until he spotted the last page, the property deed. "What is this?" he asked, voice flat. "It's the deed to your house," I said. "Triumph Properties owns it now." His eyes scanned the page, then scanned it again. "This is real." "Yes, but how you gave me an education and I put it to use." He gripped the table. His shoulders slumped forward slowly like a man unraveling. "We were trying to make you stronger." "You made me silent," I said. "You made me tired, but I learned to document. I learned to survive, and I learned to win." Mom reached across the table, her fingers trembling. "Lucy, please." I stood. "The mortgage is under a legal entity. You'll receive a new payment schedule next week. If you want to negotiate, use the email listed on the letter you received." Dad's eyes didn't leave the deed. His hands were still shaking. I walked them to the door, opened it, and waited until all three stepped outside. Chloe said nothing. Before I shut the door, I handed Mom the envelope. "You'll need this," I said. "It's everything you taught me." The room I chose faced east, so it caught the morning sun in full. I painted the walls soft white and rolled out the rug I'd stored for years. The brushes came out of their packaging with the quiet reverence of something sacred. A blank canvas waited on the easel. I hadn't painted in over 2 years. It wasn't just time or exhaustion. It was how small I'd felt in that house, how little space I was allowed to take up. Art had become indulgent, unnecessary, forgotten. Now it felt like oxygen. I was laying out my palettes when the doorbell rang. I almost didn't answer. But I did. Mom stood there alone, holding something wrapped in tissue paper. "I won't stay long," she said, voice low. "I just found this." She unwrapped the frame and handed it to me. It was a photo from my senior year art show. Me standing in front of my painting, holding a blue ribbon, smiling like I believed it would matter forever. "You were so proud," she whispered. "We were wrong." I didn't say anything. I just looked at the photo, remembering the version of me who had existed before bank shifts and invoices, and learning how to survive in silence. "I thought maybe you'd want it back," she added. I nodded, took it from her hands, and placed it on the shelf in the art room without comment. She stood there a moment longer, then turned and walked back down the driveway. I didn't follow. Instead, I closed the door, walked to the easel, and picked up my brush. The canvas was still blank, but the light was good. I sent the rent notice on the 1st of the month. It was short, professional, and left no room for misunderstanding. Payment due to Triumph Properties, LLC market rate. Grace period 5 days. Late fees apply. It felt strange to hit send, not out of guilt, but from the clarity of it, the quiet finality. I wasn't waiting for them to do the right thing anymore. I was simply doing what they had trained me to do. 2 days later, Noah forwarded me an email from Chloe. She'd applied for a receptionist job at a local salon. She'd used me as a reference. I approved the request without comment. Emma came by that evening with takeout Thai extra spring rolls, and we spread everything out across my dining table. Noah showed up an hour later with cold sodas and a printout of the LLC's first quarterly report. "You're technically profitable," he said, raising a brow. "Didn't think your revenge arc would turn into a functioning business?" I laughed. Really laughed, and leaned back in my chair. "They taught me to collect receipts," I said. "I just took it a little further." Emma grinned. "Maybe too far." "Maybe not far enough," Noah added. We clinked glasses and toasted to bad beginnings with better endings. Later, when the dishes were cleared and the house had gone quiet, I opened the drawer of my filing cabinet and slid the rent notice copy into a folder marked sent. It was the first document I'd created without fear attached to it. The house was quiet. My account was stable. My brush sat clean beside a canvas half covered in deep orange and ash blue. Tomorrow I'd finish it. But tonight I simply let the silence be mine. The studio smelled like new beginnings. Fresh paint, unfinished wood, a hint of turpentine that reminded me of college. I stood in the center of the space, sunlight pouring in through tall windows, and let myself take it in. All of it. Mine. I'd signed the lease under Triumph Properties. The LLC had assets, now steady income from a mortgage they thought would break me. Instead, it built this. I unpacked the brushes, first lined them up by size, by memory. I hung the photo Mom gave me near the entrance, not for sentiment, but for witness a record of who I used to be before I became this version of myself. When I dipped the first brush into color, my hand didn't tremble. I painted through the afternoon broad strokes, no plan, just movement. The light shifted, the shadows stretched. My phone buzzed once from the counter, and I wiped my hands to check it. A message in the family group chat, unread since I left. Are you coming to dinner? We need to talk. Chloe's hours got cut. We're trying to catch up. Don't forget the mortgage is due. I stared at it for a moment, then typed, Rent is due on the 1st. Late fees apply. Then I blocked the thread. No more explanations. No more negotiations. Just quiet. I turned off the phone, placed it in the drawer beneath the canvas table, and stepped back to look at what I'd created. It wasn't finished. It didn't need to be. The silence in the studio wasn't empty. It was earned. And as I picked up the brush again, I knew this wasn't revenge. It was return. Lucy learns that resilience and strategic planning can transform exploitation into empowerment. Burdened by her family's unfair financial demands, she meticulously documents their actions, uncovering their dependence on her income. By secretly saving and leveraging her knowledge, she purchases their home through an LLC, reversing the power dynamic. Her lesson is that enduring hardship silently can be a form of strength when paired with calculated resistance. Through record-keeping and decisive action, Lucy reclaims her autonomy, turning her family's lessons of responsibility into tools for independence, proving that survival can lead to triumph without revenge.